welcome to the Shema podcast series, Strive for Truth. This series is based on the teachings of Rabbi Rav Dessler, one of the most profound Torah thinkers of the early 20th century. In these conversations, I'm joined by Rabbi Michael Cohen, a longtime student and teacher of his work. This is not a series about inspiration or quick takeaways. It's about clarity, learning to see reality honestly and aligning our lives with what is real. Welcome back, my friends, to another episode of the Shema podcast. I have been absent for a few weeks working on some projects, and I'm very excited to be back here once again with Rabbi Michael Cohen to delve into our next essay by Rav Dessler in the book Strive for Truth. And today's essay starts off with a very famous opening line in Musar literature by Ramchal, Rabbi Lizotto, in his book, The Path of the Just. And the line says, the foundation of saintliness, or I guess holiness, and the root of perfect service is for a person to clarify and verify what his duty is in the world and toward what goal he should direct all of his efforts throughout his lifetime. Or in other words, the way I'm reading this is, what is the foundation upon which our lives are being built? And what Rav Dessler does is go really deep into this topic. Most of us think early on, and maybe, God willing, we don't continue like this, but that it's easy to get caught up in the idea that serving Hashem in our religious life is a component of our life. And then we also have our professional work life and our family life and our other interests, health, whatever it may be. And we have all these different areas of our life. And what Rav Dessler gets into with this essay that we're going to be discussing today with Rabbi Cohen is that he's saying that's a faulty foundation, that everything should be built on top of our avodah Hashem, our service of Hashem. Rabbi Cohen, welcome back. It's so good to be diving into this book once again with you.
Thank you so much. A pleasure to be here.
So he starts off really with sort of two analogies, two discussions. One is about building a foundation, but then he also talks about roots, like the trees of a root. Explain, I guess, the similarity and the distinction between these two analogies he's bringing up as far as how we, I guess, build our own roots and foundations.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is, as you mentioned, Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto, in his work, Mesillas Yesharim, or Path of the Just, introduces us to a concept of foundation and roots. And he's talking, this is a book that is written hundreds of years before the Muslim movement started. The Muslim movement, of course, started by Rabbi Salanta in the 1800s. And this book was written in the 1600s by Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto in Italy. And he says, and this is the idea of Musa, is that there's a whole branch of investigation, as you mentioned, in our lives, which is the investigation of what's our purpose in life and how do we fulfill our purpose in this world. So generally, a person would come into this world, right? A kid's born, he goes to school, plays with his friends, learns to ride a bike, has fun, makes friends, finds a subject he likes in school and grows up in school, and then maybe he'll follow his passion. Maybe he'll take a year and go. Then he'll go around the world and go to university and start studying and seeking out a profession. These are all branches of wisdom, right? There's the wisdom of learning how to ride a bike, the wisdom of how to appreciate music, the wisdom of philosophy, and the wisdom of science. This world, Rav Moshe Chaim Luzzatto is introducing us to in this book is that there's a whole field of study, which is the study of the purpose of man in this world. Purpose in this world. Study has to be untainted and pure. And in order to do that, one has to understand it and look at it as primordial. Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto says, well, this study is a root and a foundation. It's a branch. It's not something later on. It's not an afterthought. Actually, this is right at the beginning So the foundation of saintliness and the root of a perfect service lie in a person's coming to clarity and recognizing with vivid truth the nature of his duty in this world. Why are we here? What is our duty in this world? That's what. So if we look at a foundation, Rabbi Dessler points out there's a very big difference between a foundation and a root. If you look at a foundation, so we know a person's going to build a building. The first thing you do is you look at the land before you even build anything. Of the land, you want to make sure that it's solid and sturdy, and that it can support a foundation. Right? So foundation, so you got to build it in a safe place. You've got to be on ground, and then you start digging your foundation, and your foundation has to be built so perfectly that it's not going to shift. Right? It's going to stay level throughout the process of building it, and then way after that, it has the ability to support the weight of however many stories you want to build upon that foundation. The foundation for a 3-story building and the foundation for a 4-story building are actually very different. So that's the foundation, and that foundation has to be rock solid and can't deviate in any way. And then there's a root. So a root is something different. A root provides 2 things. A root provides security, sturdiness. It's an anchor into the ground, and it grows and grows. As it grows taller, the roots grow deeper. And then there's another aspect to the roots. So they're a source of sustenance. So they're bringing water for the trees. The leaves are bringing from light, and so photosynthesis are bringing energy, but they need the water in order to produce that energy. And there are other nutrients that come up from the ground. And so, that's the roots of doing things. So he said that he talks about saintliness as being the foundation of saintliness. There's a foundation for saintliness, and then there's a root for service of Hashem. So it's interesting to think, why should there be a difference?
And to define those terms will tell us a lot, because one is saintliness, or I guess holiness, and one is, you said, service, which was this action.
Yes. See, these concepts are concepts which we're to take with us throughout our lives. So this is a sentence that we read, but the idea is not to read it and then, oh, now I understand and let's move on. But the idea is, now I've got it, I put it in my pocket and I'll carry it with me wherever I go. So his Shorish HaAvoda, he uses the word Yesod HaChasidus, the foundation of saintliness, the Shorish HaAvoda, and the root of service, of Avoda, which is service. So towards the end of the essay, Rabbi Dessler tells us that Adam la'amal yulad, we were born, and our purpose in this life, we were born for a purpose. Everybody's born for a purpose in this life. It's interesting with learning this. I was studying this. I've been studying this since I'm a kid. I started studying when I was like 16 years old. I studied this, and I studied this Rabbi Dessler also about the same time. And I knew that there was a distinction between the two, but it never really hit me. What is avoda? What does he mean by avoda? And I taught this, and I had a nice way of teaching it. I've heard other people teaching it as well. And he's telling us something very profound. The insight that I got was actually from another contemporary of Rabbi Dessler, of Lapian, who points out something which is Dessler takes for granted in this essay, which is, what is avoda? Well, when we talk about avoda, well, you have to do avoda. We say, and there's a word, the service for a slave is eved, which is the root word of that word avoda, which is service. So you're going to work. You were put in this world to work. That's nice. I mean, that's okay. I get it. I could live with that. I don't know, that's this concept we want us that would be very attractive to somebody. You say, well, you're supposed to be working in this world. But that's if you look around this world, it's a beautiful world. I enjoy the world.
The other argument is that everyone's working.
Everyone's working, but you have time. We're on vacation time now. People are going on vacation, and people are seeking how to maximize their experience of 120 years, Bezra Hashem, in this world.
Yeah.
I want to do it. Let me do life. I want to do life. How do I do life? So guys said, well, do life. We'll go on vacation, learn to ski, learn
Right.
to water
You got the
ski,
bucket list.
scuba diving, go see what the underwater systems are. You go to mountain climbing, go out in the Himalayas. We want to do the world. I want to do life. Now it's saying, you got to do avoda. The mistake in that concept is that actually the avoda is the enjoyment of the world. Well, how's that? Because there's a whole dimension of this world which you might miss if you didn't do this study. That is, you could go living and driving around in this world and be in your Corvette in first gear and never get off first gear. You'd never really get to use that Corvette. You'd never get to love it because you're constantly just joking along because you're just trying to enjoy this car in first gear. But there's a way you can gear up and you can get into fourth gear, fifth gear, whatever it may be. And I know what Corvette has, but you can get there. You could be speeding along. You could really be doing this world. How do you do that? Well, the shorish ha'avoda, the root of avoda is when the person clarifies, why are you here? What's it all about? What does this world have to offer me? Because it actually has a lot to offer. Because God told us at Mount Sinai that we were going to be Goy Kadosh, a holy nation. So you get to be a holy nation in this world. Well, how do I do that? If my purpose in this world is to be a holy nation, how do I get to be a holy person in this world? Now, if you look at the book of Mesillas Yesharim, it's chapters later that he talks about holiness. You alluded to it there, the foundation of saintliness. Well, maybe that's holiness, but it's actually starts from the beginning, because a root is something you plant a seed, and the first thing a seed does is generate a root. You put a peanut seed, you can imagine a peanut seed, everybody's familiar with that, in the ground. First thing it does, those two luscious parts of it are the leaves, as it were, and then there's a root there, and it sprouts a root, and the root's going to go down and go down and down and down. The root grows. You didn't do anything to make it grow. All you did was put it in the right place. Same thing with your foundation. Thing was, you just put it in the right place. You had to build, and it took work, it took effort, but you had to put it in the right place. God put us in this world. And this is the right place for us to get an incredible life. That's where we're over here. And the roots that we're going to get down over here are going to grow as we grow through our experience in this world. And how does that happen? Well, a kid becomes bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah, right? They come of age, and then they start doing what we call mitzvahs. They do commandments. They do the mitzvahs. A boy will want to tefillin, right? And a girl will do mitzvahs like Shabbat candles or whatever. She gives charity. There's lots and lots of 630 mitzvahs. There's so many. When we do a mitzvah, actually, we say a blessing. Before a boy puts on his tefillin, he says a blessing. And the blessing is, I say to you, God, thank with his mitzvahs. Kiddishan made me holy with his mitzvahs. What's the purpose in life? Well, actually, God told us at Mount Sinai, the purpose is to be holy. A mamlechet kohanim for Goy Kadosh, become a nation of priests and a holy nation. Well, what's holiness? Actually, you don't have to know much about holiness. All you need to know is, as you do the mitzvahs, you're creating and you're growing your root, which is making you holy. Now, if I take some leather straps and I put that around my arm, does that make me holy? And the answer is no. The straps around your arms are not going to do anything to you. But if they're tefillin on them, then God made an incredible gift to us. And he says, when you do that, I'm going to make you holy. And I'm going to gift you holiness. And through that experience, you're going to get what it is to be holy. You're going to have a touch of holiness. And the more you do it, the more the root grows, and the more holy you'll become. And the more you keep attaching yourself to these various 613 mitzvahs, you're going to become. And as you continue doing that, you're going to actually get in touch with a dimension which is not readily available to anybody else. It's just available to you because you have the mitzvahs, and that's holiness.
Because holiness means separate, but at the same time that we're separating ourselves from the rest of the world, we're also causing ourselves to cleave closer to the infinite creator. And that's what separates us. And that's what he's saying is connects us and builds our roots properly.
Right, precisely. There's two parts to us. Each one of us has a neshama and a guf. So we have the body and the soul. And so if you live in this world with your body, you're living in first gear in that Corvette. But there's a way that you can excel and you can actually connect. You can gear up and you can get into a different gear and you can be moving at a different pace from everybody else. You can have a different appreciation of the world when you get to the mitzvahs. And that's when you're actually connecting with your spiritual dimension, yourself. Because actually you're being self-expressed through your holiness. So it's an area of yourself which is latent and in the dark and unknown until you discover it.
So when someone is just living in this world for what pleasures can I take from this world, and it's totally separate from service to their creator, then it's like a tree that has no roots. It's not getting any sustenance at all.
Yeah, it's not
because it's not attached to its source.
Yeah. He says over here, foundation. What we know about foundation is it has to be true. It has to have integrity. So very careful about them to make sure that what's being fed is healthy. We just think about a child or a young adult in this world. So how much they're being fed information, it's crazy the amount of information we are exposed to all the time, just even without your cell phone, without looking at your smartphone, just walking in the street, you're bombarded by bumper stickers. Just forget the billboards in New York or when you're on the highway. Just bumper stickers all over the place. People have concepts and there's discussions and conversations taking place and there's so much noise around us. It behooves us to hear Rabbi Dessler telling us, and the Rabbi Michael Cohen is telling us, it behooves to take a break from that and open our minds and to another level of study, which is the study of the purpose of man in this world. And realizing that study and that understanding of it has to be perfect. It has to be clear. It has to be on level ground. It has to be on a sure surface, because we're growing along. We've got a long way to go. That's the warning, if you like, a field of study which is elusive to many people.
So the idea is that, recap what we just discussed, becoming holy is not something that we actively do. We actively, the service of Hashem, the reason he compartmentalizes or separates those two is because the service of Hashem, fulfilling the mitzvos, the result of that will be holy.
Exactly.
And that connects us to our source. And it seems like what Rav Dessler is getting here as well, and what Ram Call is getting at, is that all of our other activities need to be built on this premise of serving Hashem, which does not mean we don't enjoy the world, but that experience becomes a part of serving Hashem, of spending time with family, of, it's a mitzvah to take a break and recharge in order to come back with more vigor to your learning and occupation, everything else. So everything can be built for that premise.
Yeah, and I mean, actually the currency is on a different level than the currency of just living for your body.
One of the things he gets into is this idea, this foundation being built on fear of heaven, fear of Hashem. And I want to discuss that because I think that's extremely profound and true, because he's really getting at, one of the things he's getting into too is how we take what we learn and we incorporate it into who we are and how we live our life. And a lot of people, I think at first when they hear, fear of Hashem, fear of heaven, it has a negative connotation to it. People don't want to live in a state of fear. But the question I always ask myself, I think everyone should ask themselves, if we were living with our sixth sense tuned in to where we were able to sense, just like we could sense everything else with our other sensory perception, the reality of the fact that we are living in Hashem's world, that he is present, he is observing all of our actions, all of our thoughts, he knows our deepest probably desires more than we do, and he's observing everything we're doing. If we were truly able to live with that reality, how would that change how we behaved and what we did? And I realized, That's not how I would act if I was understood the reality that I'm in front of Hashem. And we all do that to different degrees. And that's why the more we can live with that recognition of that reality, the more we're going to naturally, I think, incorporate things we learn and incorporate into our behavior.
True, agreed. That's this idea of Yiras Shamayim, which is a whole branch of study, a branch of wisdom. That's that elusive idea of spending time studying about Hashem in this world. It does that, so Rabbi Cohen calls this a meditation. Right? The idea of a meditation is not something you sit down and you study it and then you close the book and now go on to the next thing, but it's something that walks with you wherever you go. It's actually, you're taking it with you when you're reciting Hashayotza coming out of the bathroom or when you're going somewhere and really, actually, I'm in the presence of Hashem. And it's a fear of Hashem. Yiras Hashem is interesting, right? Because it's not predetermined necessarily. The next moment, the desire of Hashem, that Hashem is constantly creating every moment. And so living in a world which is choreographed by Hashem, and so know what's going to be the next moment. I can think what it's, I can see what it was, I can see where we're at, where it's going. So the Yiras Hashem, this idea that I'm actually living in Hashem's world, moment's going to bring, because that's it. That's Hashem's creation. That's this idea of Yiras Hashem. I'm constantly with Hashem, and He's looking after me, and He's close to me, and He's looking after what I need to make sure that I'm getting everything, but I don't know what's going to be next.
And is he tying these together? Is this is the primary foundation?
So there's two things. The foundation is the fear of Hashem. That's the Yesod HaChasidus, and the Shorish HaAvodah is the performance of the mitzvahs.
And that's more the root analogy.
Root analogy, right? As we do mitzvahs, we become our Yiras Shamayim. Our Yiras Hashem is something which it's a foundation of everything. We got to make sure that our foundation is strong.
Okay, because you can't really do the mitzvos properly and to their fullest without fear of heaven.
Because you don't know who you're serving.
Or you don't know you're serving. I was studying this morning before I went to shul, and I was just sort of noticing in our davening the way it's set up.
Yeah,
is with Pesukah Zimra, when all those Psalms are really there to get us into this frame of mind where it's all about just recognizing Hashem created everything. He governs everything.
Precisely. That is Yiras Shamayim. That is it. That's Yiras Hashem. That is it. It's just the knowledge and understanding that everything's created by Hashem, and every event that's happening in the world, and no one's going to harm me, and no one's going to hurt me. Anything that's happening to me is happening from Hashem, and I'm a of the world. That's it.
Just the knowledge, as he points out, he gives the analogy of a smoker. You can show him X-rays of his lungs and what the stats are on his length of his life, and the risk of getting lung cancer and all that.
Yeah,
doesn't mean that changes behavior.
Right.
Because
he knows how to. We discussed that before, but he knows how to fool himself. He knows how to bring out a foolish argument that I'm different, right? I'm not part of the statistics, or plenty of people do it. It doesn't happen to them, and he may be even suffering at the moment, emphysema or lung cancer, whatever it may be, and still, no, it's okay. I'll be okay. I'll be fine.
Right. Exactly. So how does he advise us on how Musar helps us move truth and things we're learning into the heart? And I think that's his whole idea, is that he's bringing up.
Yeah, that's the thing. So that's this whole, the reason why Rabbi Carmel's put it here, I believe, is because how do you study Mussar? This is a big, elusive question. It's a question in the whole world today. I mean, it really is. There's been a big upsurge of Hasidus, even in the Litvish yeshivas, right? There's been an upsurge and people have moved away from Mussar because they just don't know how to study it. And in our colloquialism, people talk about Mussar in a negative way. They say, "Oh, he's giving me Mussar. I'm being reprimanded. I'm being pushed." But that's such a mistake. Rav Dessler here throughout his life, his teaching, Rabbi Carmel and all the students that he had, was teaching that Mussar actually get out of first gear in that Corvette and gear up and get to enjoy your life and get to love your life. It's about a metacognition, understanding the way you're thinking, understanding that here, that a different plane, that from the life with your university's degree and understanding how the ways of the world in the physical way. But there's a whole spiritual dimension to the world that we're living in. And it's a whole area of study. That's Musa. That's one of the aspects of Musa. But this statement, Yesod HaChasidus, the foundation of saintliness, the voda and the root of service, pick it to pieces and just look at it and just keep it as a mantra in some ways with you. And the more you look into it over time, you'll find different things in that statement. You'll find new concepts, which Rabbi Moshe Chaim Luzzatto was writing well before the Muslim movement ever existed. As he points out, right, as Rabbi Carmel points out in his introductions, is well before there was a Muslim movement, Moshe Chaim Luzzatto's book was there. Well before Mesillas Yesharim, hundreds of years before it.
Right. So what is the issue when people say we don't know how to study Musa? I mean, it's obviously not complicated concepts. What's the issue?
The issue is that it just doesn't go in. The issue is like this. You want to tell a person to do well in business. Like someone to say, okay, should I go and get a university degree? So you don't have to bother. Don't worry about it. It's very simple. Buy low, sell high. Oh, that's it? That's all. That's all you got to do. The rest, Musa's the same thing. You tell a person, oh, the foundation of righteousness. Okay, fine. It doesn't help anybody. It just goes over our heads until you learn to actualize it, see it in your life, and compare it to something. There's another essay in here which we did study, which is like putting it into with imagination and putting it into real terms and making it very clear in front of oneself. Until you do that, it's just words. It says buy low, sell high. That's not going to help anybody in business. You got to learn how. This is what investing is. I don't know. There's so much, I'm sure. But in this area of study, it's the same thing, right? What does anger look like? What does anger do to me? What does it mean to when I lose myself and I get taken in desires? Or what is that? So that's this whole area of Musa, which is discovering a whole new vocabulary of living in this world. That's what he's presenting to us here. So if you like, this is putting the purpose of our lives in front of us all the time. So if a person were to closes the book and walks away, that's the way we study most things. Sometimes an idea is interesting when we think about it for a while. Also, it's trying to bring these concepts into our lives so that once they as we walk through life. That's why this is called, Rabbi Carmel calls this a meditation. The idea of meditation is it's something which one's thinking about and all the time. Back in the classic days of Musa, singing this and chanting this and saying these words with a lot of passion of feeling, and the idea was to get these into one's, as opposed to putting these in one's brain, putting them in one's heart. So they become actually feelings, they become emotional, they become a part of one's feeling, part of one's psyche, and part of the way one operates in the world.
Because even the study of Torah itself, if we're not putting in front of us what the purpose even that is, it can become detached from its root. Because, the study of Gemara can be very competitive, very academic, intellectual, but that's not the reason we're commanded to study Torah and Gemara and all those things. It's with the intention of, it allows us to connect to Hashem. And as Rabbi Akiva says, it's all the mitzvahs are there to support the loving your fellow as yourself.
Right.
So all those things can become detached. So it sounds like what he's doing is he's really helping us understand that we need to regularly put in front of us, like you just said, what is the purpose of our life? Why am I doing this? Because every activity we're involved with, it needs to come back to this central idea that the purpose of my life is to serve Hashem. How is this act doing that? And two people can be doing the exact same thing. Two people can be engaged in business, but one person can be doing it just because they want to make some money because they think they're in control of how much money they make. They want to buy nice stuff and they're just chasing the pleasures of the world. The other person can be engaged in business because they know that's what Hashem wants them to do, to engage in hashtadus. And the money that comes through that channel, so he has the resources to do things Hashem wants him to do with it, to buy the tefillin, give the tzedakah, buy the mezuzahs for his home, all those things. So with I think it's a very profound lesson to always just take every morning, just like in every activity before we engage in it, what is the purpose of what I'm about to do? And tie it back to its root, which is serve Hashem, or we're not doing the right thing.
That's precisely the point that Rabbi Rosh Chaim Luzzatto is making over here. Exactly. Is to be constantly aware and living for the avodah of Hashem and living for the foundation of righteousness. So that permeates everything we do.
Amazing how I'm really trying to go deeper into the siddur, and I can see how the sages that put together our siddur really equipped us with everything we need to do all these things. It's just, if you don't know, you don't really know what you're reading at first. Right. You can sort of go through that as well in a very rote manner and not realize that they really did design things so we can start every day off with this very idea we're learning here.
Right. Yeah. The siddur is and prayer opportunity for oneself to lend one emotion, thoughts, and feelings to the words that are in that book. So when you do that, you actually make your prayers totally unique. So there's no two people in the synagogue who are praying the same words. They're saying the same words, but they mean exactly what it means to them. And that's life, right? That's like you said before, there can be two people doing exactly the same business deal, or they can do exactly the same. They're doing it in their own way with their own gift to this world. And the prayer that they're making is unique. And no 2 days are the same. So the prayer that I did yesterday is not the same as one today and won't be the same as one tomorrow. So that's what living a life of knowing that you're in the service of Hashem and that you're growing like a tree is growing every moment that you do, every time you do another mitzvah, you grow even more, you get stronger roots, and you get more beautiful fruits. Beautiful analogy that Rabbi Michael Cohen does to the service of Hashem.
Every mitzvah, everything you're doing, it's also like a feedback loop, creating more fear of heaven, knowing that you're in the Creator's presence at all time. Rabbi Cohen, thank you so much for coming on once again, exploring this essay.
It's always a pleasure. You always have the greatest questions. Thank you.
All right. Until the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed the episode and found it meaningful, please take a moment to rate, review, and share the podcast.